Hello, this is Dr. Garen Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics here at Mid-America Christian University. And I am here with our Week 3 Asynchronous interview number 3 for COM 4603, Creating Social Media Presence and Cultural Movements. In our third session, students have worked on interview protocols that they've also transformed into video questions for our interviewee. I'll give a brief preview once again. Our third interviewee in this course is Leah Sutherland. Leah comes to us from sunny, we hope, Southern California. She is a podcast producer among many other talented and heavily networked ins and outs in, I guess we could say, in the entertainment industry. And she has a background as a marketing blogger, as well as a running shoe connoisseur. I don't know. We have a great many things to learn about Miss Sutherland, and she's going to share some information, some takeaways, talk to us about her social media use, her networking skills, her digital media lifestyle. And at the center of it all will be your video discussion questions that we will play. Hopefully they will come through audio-wise. If not, you all have access to each other's questions on D2L in the board. So you will be able to view each other, and most of you have seen each other's questions already. So without further ado, let me bring Leah into the fold. Leah, thank you so much for joining us. How's the weather out there in Southern California?
It is good today. It was kind of cold and rainy this weekend, actually, which is a thing I miss about Tennessee, but apparently it never rains here while it's hot. And I have yet to witness that. It's always cold and rainy, but today it looks pretty good.
Excellent. You mentioned Tennessee and some of the weather out there. I've been to the state a few times. Love it.
Right.
And I like the trees.
They have a ton of trees, yeah.
The mountains, some of the culture. But if we happen to have a question about maybe your origin story, your journey, I think that question comes from Ezel. Do we want to take a listen to that and sort of jump right into these questions?
Sure. Let me find Ezel's tape here. Okay, great. Let me know if you can hear it. I can turn it up.
Hello, everyone. Ezel Neal.
Great.
COM 4603 video discussion. Interview Leah Sutherland. Ms. Sutherland, I have two questions I would like to ask you. First question is, did you know anyone in California, or did you just took a great risk because of the success stories of people that risked it all and made it in Hollywood? Second question.
We'll start that one first. No, I did not know anyone when I moved out here. It was a huge risk. And I met you, Garrett, a couple months right before I moved. At the end of my time in Nashville, I went to school in Charleston, South Carolina, studied communication. My focus was on media studies and interpersonal communication. Then I met you at a conference, which still feels like a fluke. I feel like I had no business being there. So that's funny. And I think I moved out here with the idea that I would still work in communication in some, I guess I still am, media. But I was ghostwriting, blogging, social media managing kind of remotely after I left my job in Nashville as a social media and content manager at a digital agency. So we built websites, did social media management. I did all of the kind of B2B writing there. And then when I came out here, I bounced around neighborhood to neighborhood, tried to meet some people, joined a running group. Like you mentioned, I do know a lot about running shoes, probably way too much. I have a bad habit of analyzing people's gait on the sidewalk. So if I see somebody whose feet are rolling in a bunch, I'm like, you need a stability shoe. Please go get one. You're stressing me out. And then I started working on a specific podcast show called Hollywood and Crime, which is owned by Wondery, the network that I work for now. And that was just kind of the result of me getting lunch with the people who executive produced the show, because they were a friend of a friend from Nashville. And then I worked on that for 2 years, and then I got a job here at the network. And now I feel like I've kind of finally settled into the beginnings of like a life here as opposed to just being out here.
This is awesome. I love what you're describing because it is this combination of experience, personality, sort of authenticity, pursuing your passion, and then active networking. And each of these have been themes we have covered strategically in this course thus far. I'm trying to recall. We have a few questions that hit on all of these topics. So just in staying in, without going down a long digression or diatribe, do you want to jump into an additional student question?
Sure. Let me find one of the ones that was kind of. This is the problem with multimedia.
Mhm.
Let me play Chris's because he asked. Let's see.
Hello, my name is Chris Peschel, currently a junior at Mid-America Christian University. I have a couple of two-part questions for you this week. First, where do you see your career going in the next 5 years? And how does this align with a goal you have recently set for yourself?
Okay, so let me start with that because we kind of just talked about, I guess, the last 5 years of my career is what I just described because I've only been out of college for like 4. And I've been in LA for almost 3. It'll be 3 this summer. And so I think in the next 5, I want to transition into TV and film. Podcasts, I love.
Triple threat.
They're what?
It's a triple threat.
I hope so. That's kind of the goal. And I would love to be working for a television show, either as a writer or a producer within the next 5 years. And that's a lot of the skills that I'm getting here. We are making shows. So it's a very like kind of similar process, but it's a lot smaller. Like it is a lot cheaper and a lot more kind of like the production timeline is a lot shorter because you can just, I'm in the recording booth at our office right now. So you can pop in, record something, mix it, and then just put it out the next day. You don't have to wait on anything really. So those skills are good. But then transitioning into television is a totally different kind of thing. So I'm gaining like production skills, writing skills, and networking here. Last week I went to a meeting at United Talent Agency. There's a ton of agents over there, creative agents. My boss is a former screenwriter. He opened a production studio that makes films. I know the head of current programming at Sony. So when the time comes and I have a script that I think is good, those are the people that I'll reach out to. But that's kind of in the future. Those are the connections where like they're amazing to have, get them as soon as possible, but you only get one shot, really. So I can't just give him a bunch of terrible scripts. Like it's going to be one really good script that I believe in, and then he'll read it maybe. So hopefully I'll be able to move into that.
Let me piggyback off of these questions because I want to strike while an idea is hot here. You're talking about maximizing, taking full advantage of that single opportunity. You're never guaranteed a second. Sometimes we're never guaranteed a first. Sometimes we have to make that first happen.
Absolutely.
Someone like the head of programming for Sony. When you did state specifically when I'm confident that a script is polished, but how do you get to that point of knowing just what to say when you approach someone? Is that a gut instinct thing? Is that something where you just gain experience through practice, through trial and error? Talk us through that process of how do you become like master navigator and networker?
Well, to start, I think it's different for everyone, different industries. I have a specific personality where like I probably talk more than I should, but I'm also pretty comfortable talking to almost anyone, which is a huge bonus. So in terms of like when the moment is right, I've known him for about a year. He used to work here at Wondery, which is how I know him. And I need to hit him up and get lunch again sometime soon and just see what he's up to. But I guess it becomes like the practice to getting the script ready is, I'll do sketches or I'll write podcast episodes or I'll write other things that kind of develop my skills as a writer, get me more comfortable with the process and kind of have a portfolio built up. And then in terms of like getting the actual script done, I need to make sure that it's exactly what I want to go forward with. So I don't want to really write a spec or something that's an episode of a show that already exists. I want to kind of go forward, I think, with my own material. So then I'll develop the idea, write the script, give it to my friends to read, get feedback from people who are, the stakes are lower. So I know a bunch of working professionals. I know a staff writer for the TV show Adam Ruins Everything, people who work for College Humor, Second City, Upright Citizens Brigade professionals. So all of them will read it and give me feedback. It's kind of the same, though. You get kind of like one shot. So you're not going to badger anybody but your closest friends to read the same script 5 times. And so then after that, incorporating those notes and feedback, when I feel really strongly about it, then you present it. And also go into it knowing they might hate it. And that's totally fine, because whatever the networks are looking for, whoever they're looking for, is also super dependent on just whatever the execs want. So this year, I know every network kind of is looking for game shows. And I don't want to write a game show. I have no interest in that. So just by virtue of whatever they're looking for, whenever I present it, they may or may not do anything at all with it, or even remember me as like a specific person that they want to hire for anything.
You mentioned game shows and not necessarily being interested in writing them, but however, one of our students in our class has a personal connection to producer on The Price is Right. And that's Megan, who's about to potentially, she kind of gravitates between Oklahoma and SoCal. Anyway, let's jump into Megan's question, and I think it's brief and it'll keep us going on pace here.
It is brief. Okay, great.
Hi, Leah. My name's Megan, and my question for you is, how did you come to work for Wondery? Was it connections and networking? Was it like a job site posting, or was it some other avenue? Thanks.
Okay, so I feel like it's still a fluke that how I got here. So when I mentioned this briefly, but when I moved out here, I posted on Facebook to all my Nashville and South Carolina connections. I was like, I'm moving to LA. Does anybody know anyone? Which is weird because I don't usually do that. I don't use social media kind of for those crowdsourcing things. So I thought it would be useful, and it was. And I have a woman who I've been family friends with for a long time. She's my parents' age. She has a son who's my age. And she reached out and said, like, she knows these people who live out here, and they're writers, very cool, very nice. So I reached out to them. They did me a favor and got lunch with me, and we ended up hitting it off. And they are also, there's this guy named John Ponder and his production partner, Tracy Patton. And they're both older, my parents' age also, but they're both, we had just a great time, great conversation. So they brought me on for another type of podcast that I worked on the production for. They liked me enough to bring me on to the show Hollywood and Crime. And then Hollywood and Crime, they were pitching at the time, and that got picked up by Wondery. So then I worked on the first 2 seasons of Hollywood and Crime. And then through them, I also heard that Wondery was looking for a social media manager. And I was like, I've done that. I can do that. Okay, great. Went in for an interview, got it as like a part-time job, basically, a glorified internship, if you will. And then from there, I turned it into another job. And then now I moved into a different department, and now I'm doing content.
This is great. So what I'm hearing, to reiterate Leah's narrative, personal narrative here, is that you are, you're not only thinking about a given situation. Sorry to scream at anyone. You're not thinking about an interview as something closed in this room where they call you in, and you must dress for X and be at Y, and they are looking at their folders of you. This is an ongoing, organic process that unfolds piece by piece, and you never know where the next opportunity is going to come from, but you want to maximize all of those personal relationships that also blur lines to professional relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in a town like this, or anything in media or entertainment, you have to be able to kind of straddle that line and know when, oh, I'm meeting you for coffee and we're not going to talk about work. I'm going to build this relationship, because then when it comes time to talk to business, we'll be in a better position to help each other.
Wow, I love that. This is spontaneous. No one's asked this question, but is there what are some of the nonverbal cues that perhaps someone would need to pick up on to recognize? Okay, now is not the time to flood this contact with my with my latest amazing idea.
I think honestly, like one of the things is like place setting or mise en scène, and like where are we meeting? Are we meeting for lunch? Are we having lunch? Is this set up as like a coffee meeting or lunch? Great. Are we meeting in your office? Okay, automatically business talk. Or usually if they're on like a lunch break, okay, cool. Like you probably need a break from work. We're not going to do that. Otherwise, I think nonverbal cues, I think it's like anything else. Like when people assume a defensive posture, or if they pull away for any reason, okay, great, I've crossed some sort of line, unless they're just like settling deeper into the chair. But people lean in when they're interested. So
Mm-hmm.
keep following that. I always try to be.
Do tell.
Yes, hello. I like to lean in just because I feel like it helps me concentrate on the person. And I'm big on eye contact. I will not back down. Even if it's like the head of a company or the head of like the biggest talent agency in Hollywood, like I will look at them directly in their eyeballs because that's just another human. So I think that helps me a lot.
Leah is a leaner.
And I'm an eye contact, and I will not look away.
Very human. That's good. These are fundamental skills. It's just so amazing to have them reiterated, right? And sometimes it's like, oh, Dr. G or Gary or whoever is he's such a Ponzi schemist. What is this textbook he's throwing at me? But to hear people actively in the real world reiterate these facts of life, and right as the jingle sets in, it is significant. There was. You mentioned Second City before. Do you recall which student question asked specifically about that? I'd love to get into your experience there. Students were excited to learn you are a graduate of the Second City School in Hollywood. So congratulations, first of all. All right, great job, well done.
It felt like getting a graduate degree because it took 2 years and
no doubt
to get it done.
It is, yeah. Wear that badge.
Let's see. I know Kimberly had a question about it specifically. And then I also did before we get into that, I think one of the things that you mentioned about kind of like the progression of my job here at Wondery, the biggest thing is it is taking advantage of opportunities and being able to create them for yourself. And that's like a huge improv kind of foundation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Saying yes to the opportunities that are in front of you, because you never know what could happen. Like it's so easy to quit a job. I think we have a lot of fear about leaving a position. But I also think the idea of something not being a good fit for us culturally is more kind of accepted. So say yes to whatever you can. And I've left 100 million little tiny like PA gigs that I thought were awful that supposedly are good for my career. But I knew it was not a good, like personally, I felt weird about it. So I've left 100 little teeny gigs along the way.
You're amazing. Your confidence is just beaming from the day of it.
Wow.
While you're queuing up Kimberly's question, this gets me. It gets me. What this is terrible phrasing. Lazy May, right? Late April grammar here. But one of the things we want to clarify, I think, is that when we, when the outside person hears about the Second City improv school and so on, and maybe even research it online, and we pass along some links, that sort of thing, there was an overwhelming perception, I think, that it is majority comedy school, and this can just one of those things, people accumulate certain perceptions of organizations, but in fact there's a little bit broader, or much broader rather, goings on with a program like that. So can you clarify for the record the type of diverse setting you get with a Second City school?
Sure. So their entire program, they have an improv program, a conservatory program, and right now I'm in their directing program. There's also a writing program. So it's really kind of anything to do with not only comedy, but writing, basically all the things I just listed. which I'm also not doing well at connecting my thoughts right now. But so to complete the program and graduate from the school, you go through the first levels of improv. You audition for this conservatory. Okay, great. You're in the conservatory, and there's 5 levels in this conservatory. The first 3 are also improv. And when I say improv, it is comedy, but Keegan-Michael Key has kind of a great view on comedy and how it's drama, but the stakes and the situations are absurd.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that.
It's excellent. And I really, really 100% believe this is, you can apply any of these to your life, because every day is an improv. Like, I have no idea what this video chat is going to turn into, but I'm here and I'm present and I'm like working my way through it with you. And if I'm like, man, I'm hot, I need to take off my jacket. Wow. Nobody cares, right? You just move on. And you laughing and being like, that's great. That's you saying yes to what I'm putting forth in the world. So I don't feel like an idiot, you know? So those things I think are super helpful. Okay, great. So you were gone through the improv program, you audition again, and you get into the highest levels of this conservatory. And you're still doing improv, but now it turns into re-improvisation, which is more of a writing skill. So you did a scene, what worked, what didn't? Okay, great. Let me improvise it again with a different angle. And if a moment arises where I can use something that worked well the first time, I'm going to do it. Okay, great. And you have a totally new scene. You come up with new ideas, new games. You're idea generating this whole time. Okay, cool. So you finish that, and then you audition for grad review, which is the last term. And you are in a process-based show. You work with a director. You have a cast of 6 to 8 people, and you spend like the whole year just with that group. And you develop your own sketch review. You put it up on stage. It has a full run, just like any other show at Second City, or any other school in town. You get like a graduate show run for like 6 weeks. And then you're done, and you've gone through the entire thing, and you've gone from not knowing anything at all to having a whole show.
This is terrific. This is terrific. Did we already stomp all over Kimberly's question, or did she have something separate to it that you want to?
I'm going to play it right now.
Hi guys, my name is Kimberly DeLorge, and for this week 3 video discussion for interviewee Leah Sutherland for our COM 4603 class, my first question would be, would you have wished you would have known before you got into the improv and writing industry? And then a little follow-up to that question would be, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given in relation to your career?
2 great questions. I did take off my jacket. I was hot. That was real.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay, so what do I wish I'd known before I got into improv and writing is how much work it is, because it feels a lot like play. And hopefully a lot of things in your life or career feel kind of like games or like play. Because if it's not fun, then kind of like, what's the point? Not totally. You have to do some things you don't want to do. But it's a ton of work. And it's a ton of vulnerable work, because you're putting yourself out there up on stage. A ton of people have like an overwhelming fear of public speaking. I knew I do. Like, this is fine. But if there was an audience, I would be terrified and way sweatier. So I think that's one of the things, is like how much of you it takes to like excavate and put yourself out there in positions that are really uncomfortable and like have huge possibility for failure. So that's a big thing. And the other thing I wish I'd known is exactly how insecure I was about those things. And I thought I'd kind of worked through some of these. We had to do public speaking and debate during my communication studies. So I was like, okay, cool, I've moved past it. But I was wrong, and it's something that I have to keep working on. In relation to that, some of the best advice I've gotten is just to be patient about everything. Because I get really impatient because I am ambitious, and I think I'm pretty smart. And so I see opportunities, but I can't quite either fully commit myself to them or grasp them as well as I want to. Or even with writing or performing, like I wish, there are times I wish I was just better. I have really terrible ideas and executions a lot of time. But I think patience and trusting in you being able to take care of yourself, and you being able to develop these skills, and then the people around you, trust them to help you out. I think just like trusting the process and being patient with your own development is one of the biggest things. And my mom told me that, actually. She's great.
This is awesome. I love this idea of, and it is easier said than done, but don't be afraid to fail. You know, it's just like a recent comment that you made. I'm going to tie it back to something else you said just a couple of minutes before, which is you had multiple gigs you were not afraid to pull the plug on and walk away from if you could understand in that moment it was not going in a direction you intended it to, or it was not fulfilling you in a way that you were, needing to, let alone wanting to be fulfilled. And I love this philosophy, this life philosophy of, although there will be mundane tasks we all must face that aren't necessarily quote unquote fun, but you add, if it's not fun, what's the point? And this does circle back around to a core theme we had earlier in this course, which is pursuing your passion, engaging in something you can be passionate about, and that's what we're hearing.
I hope so. I think it is you always have to find any kind of job that makes the terrible parts about the job worth it. Like, I do a lot of stuff that I don't really care about, like admin stuff, but it's worth it because I get to do fun stuff. And I think anything if you want to write and you find like an administrative assistant job, okay, cool. That's kind of boring probably for you, but you also probably have a lot of mental free space to be able to think about your writing or your projects. You probably also have downtime during the day and you're sitting in front of a computer. Why not work on your stuff? So I think there's benefits to every situation. So let's take advantage.
Let me pose a follow-up question here. It's a riddle of sorts that we debated back and forth. I just want to get your take, unbiased take here. We're exploring this term passion and this goal of being passionate about what we do. So the question emerged: can one fake passion? What is your take on that? How do you feel about it? Can a person fake passion?
Yeah, I think so. But I think to a certain point. An example from my career recently, when I started working at Wondery, I swore before that I would never take another social media management job. Because I hate it. I hate it so much. I really don't care that much for social media. And I think John asked if my use of social media has gone down since I started working in it. And yes, my overall consumption of media is down because I'm just overwhelmed by it. But I took the job here as a social media manager because I knew it would get me closer to the stuff that I wanted to do. And hopefully I'd be able to pick up some content work, producing work. Exactly what happened. But we got to the point this past spring, spring here in LA, it's warm all the time. Back in I think January or February, where I had reached the limits of what I was able to do for the company just because I didn't care enough to keep following it or learn more about it. And we needed somebody who was going to actually take on all of it and become a community manager for us and just take our social media presence to the next level. And that was a really hard decision because I was worried about whether I would be able to find a job. What if they didn't have a position for me here? I'd have to go find another job. And it worked out because I do really care about content and I have prioritized it and did a really great job. So I think you can fake passion up to a certain point, but know that you're going to run into the wall at some point where you're going to have to make a harder decision. Because I think faking passion for a career is really just putting off jumping in with both feet for whatever reasons. I chose it for financial reasons. I needed a job and it worked out. So I don't think the reasons are bad, but you're going to I think you can to an extent.
You mentioned that you have a passion for content. Would you say that you are content for content?
I think I'm more than content, but I do appreciate that. It's dumb that they're spelled exactly the same, right?
Let's jump back to a question. You mentioned John. Let's hop over to John and see what he has to say.
Let's play it.
Hi, this is John Lee with COM 4603. And today we are interviewing Miss Leah Sutherland. And Ms. Sutherland, I have a question for you that pertains to what you would believe or what you would consider to be one of your greatest assets to the company you're working for right now. And part two is, what would be the biggest struggle that you've overcome at your present job?
Good questions. I guess my biggest assets to the company now, I think that I'm flexible and that I'm adaptable. Because I have held like 3 different positions now since I started here a year ago. Uh,
Let me interject really quick, and I know you're working through this question, but when you sometimes jobs can be particular. Are you actually shifting entirely from position to position, or is it like some jobs where they just simply keep adding more titles and descriptions and jobs, and then you're still, in some ways, in a similar place?
um, I'm not in the same place I was when I started,
Rock
but
on.
it hasn't been a clear shift. It's been like a flow
Mm-hmm.
to the job I have now. And I think that goes along with that's kind of been my biggest struggle here. We have, I think, like 15, maybe 17 like full-time people. A couple are in New York, some are here. So the company is growing. It's pretty small. And it has like when I started, especially a year ago, we had like one little office. It was very like startup vibe. And startup, you do anything, whatever needs to be done. That's kind of within your realm. And so I have never had like a actual like clear job description. For the first, 7 or 8 months, I didn't really have a formal title that I jived with just because it would change depending on whatever I was doing or whoever I was being introduced to. So only the last like couple months that I've become the content coordinator have I had like a clear title, but still my kind of day-to-day tasks change. I'll pick up producing a show or like a project or something, but then I still have to do like regular coordinator and admin stuff. So I've like flowed into this job, which is like, I don't know, when things aren't totally clear, it's also a little bit harder to grab onto. It's harder to be invested in your position. And I think it's harder to kind of, to grab onto exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Let's see. I'm trying to think of one of the more natural transitions from our student questions. What about a question from Aaron? Aaron had a couple of excellent questions.
He did.
Let's hear from her.
Let's go back. I like all these little intros. I should have started the video at like past the little introduction, but I think it's fine.
Hello, Ms. Sutherland. My name is Erin Stelter, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to let us interview you today. I have a couple questions for you. First, in an ideal world, gender issues would be non-issues, but as things stand, what advice can you offer to women who are entering the workforce, specifically in communications, based on your experience?
Ooh.
That's a good question. She also has a really great second question, so I'm going to answer these separately.
I like it. And Aaron's rocking the backdrop, right?
Yes.
Her background is on point for this session.
And I love those glasses. Like her outfit is so good.
The foreground's working, the background's working.
It's all working for me. Erin, great job. What advice? Okay. Women entering the workforce. That's, I think, is an interesting question. Just because it is something that like, I don't necessarily think about it explicitly every day, but it 100% influences everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to try to pull some of these like threads forward and try to make something. I think advice, get ready to be frustrated, I think, more than you expect. And I don't want to say like it's all going to be hard because like I work with a lot of really wonderful men and women who are supportive. But there are still times when I will be the only woman in the room and having to kind of speak up for, like, if we're making a show that's like female skewing and there are some decisions that I'm like, I really don't think that's the best choice, or I really don't feel like that's going to work because like somebody has to say something. And again, I'm working with a lot of really excellent, kind of aware and sensitive men, but still, get ready to kind of be frustrated with some decisions. And I run my mouth a lot. I probably speak up about things like that when I don't really have any authority to, but it like, I wouldn't be happy or be able to sleep at night if I didn't speak up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I think I can give advice is be ready to be an ally to whoever needs you to be an ally. Help other women. sometimes women are going to be terrible, and that's sad, and I wish everybody was great, and I would love to stand up for every woman, but there's still people, and sometimes terrible people are just terrible. But the good ones, help out in any way you can, especially if it's a woman of color. Go out of your way if you see anything, them being discriminated against in any way, even if it's really subtle, or like it is my job as a white person to stand up for the people who can't do that, and not to sound like white savior in any way, but that's just kind of like your job. So stand up for other women. There's a really great book called Feminist Fight Club that explains a lot of this better than I can. But I think, yeah, get ready to be mad, run your mouth if you have to, if you can get away with it.
Yes.
And help other women out.
Oh, I like it. We were just talking about with our weekly discussion questions some of the drawing case studies of some of these controversial social movements that take place, and it's not only really easy to just jump into oppositional mode, but that's often how those narratives get constructed by not only the professional news media but also the alternative news media. We get into some debates about that. We're trying to figure it out, man. We're trying to become digitally literate. And one of the problems, the issues we face is we're constantly being sent messages intentionally skewing information. And one of the takeaways I recall offering at the end of the day was like, when we get down to that human level, we must just be ready to sort of step in and advocate on behalf of individuals, and recognize that we get into problems when we label a single organization as all bad, or an agency, a group, as antagonistic. There might be minor factions, sublets within a group where conflict comes from.
Absolutely. It is hard. That's something that I've had to. I'm young. I'm very ardent feminist, ready to kind of be on guard or defensive. In my directing program right now, I'm the only woman, and there's 7 of us. So on the first couple days when I walked into this room of only men, my teacher's a man, I was kind of ready to shut down any bullshit, if you will, that I felt coming my way. And so I'm walking into that, though, being defensive and ready to start an argument. And then I'm in the wrong when I do, unless it's actual kind of, I feel like this is a real kind of moment where I'm being treated poorly. So that is like a huge balance, though, is like, when do I need to stand up? When do I need to back down? When am I wrong? Even though I'm trying to fight the good fight, when am I being overly aggressive and antagonistic and creating problems that aren't there? I think that's a huge problem, kind of like you said, like it's hard to discern what's happening. And the more you can parse it out and kind of try to read in between the nuances of everything is a huge skill in communication, but also it's a great way to move through the world. Because nothing is all bad or all good. I'm a pretty terrible person, probably, in a lot of ways. A normal human. I like to think I'm pretty good. I have pretty good morals, but I know there's some areas where I'm probably garbage and I just don't know it. So who knows?
Oh, checks and balances. Checks and balances. We're supposed to live in a deliberative democracy. Let's jump back to part 2 of Aaron's questions. How about that?
Yes, here it is.
And second, as a content producer, how do you deal with criticism of your material?
Ooh.
And what advice can you give to those of us who may be entering fields where our work will be critiqued?
That's a great question. I don't handle criticism well at all. Mostly because I put a lot of pressure on myself to do a good job. And I work very hard, and I want whatever I put out, even a first draft, to be good, to prove both to my organization and to whoever I'm working with that I am qualified. So that stems from a place of insecurity. All of this criticism and bad reactions is all me being insecure about the work that I'm able to create. Because I'm used to if this draft is garbage, then everything's going to be garbage. Why am I even trying to do this? I need to quit altogether. And so that's something that I practice. On Friday, I wrote a thing for my boss, a little mini daily episode of a podcast we're thinking about launching. And I wrote this whole script. I wrote 2 versions of it, sent it in. I was like, great, I feel really good about this. I'm really excited. I totally rewrote it. And that's just how it is. And I felt really bad for like 20 minutes. Like, I let him down. I did a terrible job. Who am I to be a writer? But I don't know the answer to that question. I think just try to be open. And also, like, it's gonna suck sometimes. Somebody's gonna, like, hate something that you love. And there might be valuable feedback in it. I think learn to take what's valuable, and also learn when whoever you're writing for is just not your style.
Oh, this is great. This is great. And, we practice this in education. We get accustomed to it. Can feel different from primary, secondary education to higher education, but these rhythms of feedback. And while our goal is often to craft constructive feedback, because majority of us respond more positively to positive encouragement or positive reinforcement, the reality is we are always works in progress, right? Our thoughts, our ideas. And just as the student may feel as if their work doesn't receive enough celebration yet, recognize even on the other side, right? Your employers, just as myself, when I'm submitting writing, everyone has something on the line, and so once again, we were just talking about checks and balances. We are all striving towards something closer to a definition, a cultural definition of quote unquote perfection, or something doable enough to be shared on that scale. And so it's healthy to face those tensions, to feel them, and then I think an important takeaway you mentioned is, okay, and 20 minutes later, I'm just going to hit reset and we're going to go from here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to. And that's also like, I've learned so much more from negative feedback or, constructive criticism, or even just outright criticism. I've learned a lot more about myself and the way I handle pressure and stress, but then also kind of what I actually do need to work on and what my weaknesses are, than I have from positive feedback. And I know, especially with comedy and the group of friends that I have, they're all very supportive, but they're also like yes people. They're gonna I present them with an idea. Everybody has that group though. Like, your friends because they like you and you like them and they say yes to you all the time, which is fine, but there's no way to grow from that.
Quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
You do not have to answer this. Are they yes people or are they yes people?
Oh my God. I am so glad you asked. A little bit of both. Depending on where I am in
LA. Who have we not heard from? Where's another question?
Let me see.
People take this serious.
I think we talked to Chris, we talked to Megan, we talked to Ezel, John, Kimberly, Aaron. I think we have Michael. Did we talk to Michael?
No.
Oh. And then we also have Brittany, but I didn't have a video.
Okay, but we can tackle a couple of the written questions if you like, or a question if you highlighted one.
I did. I pulled 2. So let's go to Michael. Let me find Michael.
Groovy.
Enjoyed Michael.
There is Will as well. Will got a video in this morning, but it didn't make it to the email I sent you last night.
Well, that's okay. That one we'll just improv. Let's do it live. So you can play it if you have it, and then I'll do whatever.
If he's lucky.
If he is lucky. My time is very valuable.
That's right. Time is money, and
that's
we are not paying for this.
I'm not seeing any of that money coming in, but I think if I just sit somewhere long enough, it'll eventually happen.
Yes.
Okay, let me play Michael's.
That's okay.
Hello. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Mrs. Leah Sutherland. I have 2 brief questions for you. The first one will be, what sparked your passion in the podcasting industry? And the second one will be, what challenges did you face as a social media and content manager during your time at South Central Digital? Thanks for your time and have a nice day.
Oh, what a great question. Okay. Passion for podcasting. That came from a passion for storytelling. I love stories. I love hearing stories. Yeah. I started listening to podcasts at my last job, and they kind of helped carry me through. And just like podcasting is such an intimate experience, which I don't think people think about necessarily because you're listening in your car. But if you're listening in your headphones, these people are talking like directly into your ears, and you're the only one who's experiencing that. And I mostly listen to podcasts on my commute, but I'm still the only one in my car, so I'm experiencing this all alone. And you feel like you really know these people, especially if you listen to kind of like personality-driven shows or like talk shows. You get to know these people, you know their voices, and that's huge, much more intimate than knowing their face. So I think that is really interesting, just that concept of like forced or fabricated intimacy with somebody. It's one-way communication, kind of. They are talking to you. You don't have the chance to interact with them. I guess the same can be said about television, but I need to ask you some questions about the medium is the message in this.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned, this is a great place to digress. You mentioned, I love this concept of fabricated intimacy. Love it. I've already made a note. This will now be online. I'm giving you credit next time I write something. Citation, but this gets me thinking about, shoot, I'm losing my train of thought here. You mentioned first podcasting, a mass form of communication, then you reference it, television by comparison, and then both being isolated or traditional forms of mass communication. However, we are seeing in the social media age, I know you're trying to taper off some of the time on there, people talk back, right? They might hear your podcast and then all of a sudden they're tweeting at you, right? They're wanting to engage or extend themselves into that, digital dreamscape.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think I just think of them as so different though, because that's totally, if I'm responding to you on Twitter, there are rules that come with communication on Twitter that are very different than the rules of communicating through a podcast. You're supposed to be quippy and witty on Twitter. Be funny if you are funny. Don't try to be funny if you're not, because it always bombs. But you have to be short and pithy and to the point, and therefore your responses to those can only be one thread of a conversation. You can't have, winding answers to questions like we're doing here or in a podcast, because there's just no time and space for it. So I think that's true. People will respond. But the answers that those responses garner, or even the weight of those responses and that feedback, I think varies just where they're being sent. Let's also, like, what's the value of a like on Twitter? What's the value of a like on Facebook? If you take, 0.505 seconds to click like on something, okay, cool. But your investment is still pretty low. Your engagement with it might still be pretty low. I can like something, but do I care? No.
It's funny. I just listened to a program that was on satellite radio, and the on-air personalities got into an argument with one another because one that's more someone of greater notoriety in the public, so aka a celebrity type person, they had sent a tweet of endearment, whatever that is, to the co-host over Twitter. So an open communication, sharing of thanks and gratitude or whatever. The respondent, the lesser known figure, but the primary host on the program, only liked it and they didn't take any other steps forward. And then so the more well-known co-host called them out on it on the program and suggested they didn't know how to use Twitter correctly, that liking was a blow-off comment now, that we've reached that point in that. And their criteria for the argument even included, so why don't you pick up the phone and call me and thank me for sending that tweet to you, which is a completely backwards in time method of communication. I can't recall the last time I sustained a telephone conversation if there was no authentic purpose behind the call.
Yeah. Wait, did you have my volume? Because I can hear me coming back through the video now. That's weird. Oh well. Anyway, that's so weird because I feel like the celebrity person doesn't understand the use of social media now. I don't know. And also like the insecurity to like need to bring that up, or like the desire for some some content, something to think about. You can't think of anything better to think about than like, you didn't like my tweet. How many times has that joke been done? How many times has that like fake argument been?
Well, you're getting at a great point, and then we get to the issue of, this was a show that recently expanded to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, instead of 2 hours a day, 5 days. And one starts to feel that impression of filler content, right? So sometimes we are just making up content for content's sake. I bet that's not the kind of content you're passionate about.
Not always. And that's a problem here sometimes, is like, if we sell ads on a certain week, the show that, so I produce a show called Tides of History. It's a history show. If we sell an ad on a show that's like additional ads, then I have to come up with additional content to put in the show. Like, we have to make more stuff. And it's not always fun, but I try not to do it too often. But that's just like, that's a reality of some things too. And this comes back to like, can you fake passion? Like, I can fake good content and stuff that I'm interested in, I think sometimes. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of like, it sounds like they had more like advertising revenue and they needed to create an extra hour. But I don't know. Not more content is not always better content.
What was part 2 of Michael's question set? Did we get to that or?
Didn't. Well, we kind of did. It was what challenges I faced when I was working at South Central Digital, my first job in Nashville.
Okay.
Mostly it was I didn't really care about the work I was doing. It was great in a lot of ways. I really learned how to like be in an office. I was very green.
Ooh.
I got that job like I got hired like a month before I graduated. And so then I started immediately after graduation. And like before that, I worked at like Baskin Robbins and I did an internship. So I had no experience.
Ooh, what flavor would you? No, I'm kidding.
Did you know you can buy a whole one of those big tubs for $55 and take it home if you have freezer space?
Or a free weekend, right, by yourself?
Absolutely, yes. People did that. People came and picked up those big gallon, like multiple gallons.
Did they come in tears, or it was just like
that would have been great? No,
I'll have the rocky road.
No, I worked there over the summer, and it was usually for like, we're having a party, or my kid's having a thing, or like it's 4th of July, and it was usually like there was a reason, which is
that makes practical sense there.
I mean, I did a lot of sad emotional binge eating while I worked there.
Yes, while you were working at the office, right?
Oh yeah, you got a free scoop for every shift, I think it was. Like maybe 2 scoops even. So perks, right?
Let's how about a question from Will?
Great.
I'm going to queue up a question from Will. And I've read his questions, but I haven't watched this video yet.
Great.
Oh, it's a long one.
Oh,
volume's down. Hang on.
Hello everyone, this is William Gibbons here.
I'm gonna start it one more time.
Hello everyone, this is William Gibbons here. Coming from our MACU campus, which I'm probably the only one still here, but it's okay. I'm here with our week 3 video interview. And this is our.
Can you hear him? Is the audio coming through?
Yeah.
Okay. Campus.
We're getting a panning shot of the MACU campus. Will is working on his, what do you call it, the visuals.
Great.
The great irony, since the visuals are lost.
I can hear it though. It's great.
Here comes the question.
Still with her improv career and her work with Wandering Network, and also her journey out to California. So my first question for her is, when she moved from Nashville to California, how long did it take her to get her career started? Because I know a lot of people move out to California, and some are successful and some aren't, especially when it comes to starting a career with Hollywood.
And you have addressed this to a certain extent.
Also,
so
how many shows or programs have you done for the podcast for the Wandering Network? And my last question is there a certain type of improv that you study when you're at the Second City School of Improv when you got your degree?
Okay, so let me paraphrase Will here. Tell us a little bit about the variation of experiences. A couple of the sample texts you mentioned, the podcast texts by name, but what genre do they fall into, other than I guess history? And then maybe what aspect of your improv experience was your preferred?
Cool. So I work on all of our original shows for Wondery. So last week, actually, we just launched a show called American Innovations. If you go to Apple Podcast, it's still the #1 show on the iTunes charts. So check it out.
What?
It's science and tech. It's cool. You'll hear my voice in the post roll. I'm doing some advertisements with one of our clients that's on that I produce those segments. So that one's cool. That's science and tech. We have history shows, American History Tellers. There's a theme here with the names of our shows. American History Tellers and Tides of History are history shows. What else do we do? Business Wars is interesting. That's a business show. And they do kind of like the great business rivalries. So like Coke versus Pepsi, Nike versus Adidas.
Mm-hmm.
Into those.
Interesting.
Yeah, that one's, I really like a lot of them. I always learn a ton when I listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
We have a workplace advice show called Safe for Work. A true crime show, the one that I started working on, is Hollywood and Crime. And the season 3 of that, all about the Wonderland murders here in LA, is coming out next week. I think actually it's coming out. Yeah. What else are we doing? We have the biggest one we probably have is a true crime show that came out last fall called Dirty John. It's about a con man here in Southern California, released in conjunction with the LA Times. It's 6 episodes, so you can kind of binge it in a day if you wanted. That's probably the biggest show that we have.
Wow. So let me provide just a improvisational follow-up question here. How many podcasts, if you can reveal such elite industry secrets, how many podcasts at a time do you all actively work on, or do you actively?
So our network, we're a network and we're a production company kind of at the same time. So all of our original series that we make in-house, how many are there? There's like, I want to say 10, but I think that's too low. I think the network as a whole has like 50 something shows. We have partner shows too that we work with to help them kind of grow their shows, raise the quality of their content a little bit, not in all cases. Some shows are excellent from the beginning, and then make money on for them.
So water the shows while the producers are out of town for the weekend, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I do. I kind of work on more like, I'm more like big picture. So I'll read some submissions. I'll go with my boss. My boss is like the head of all content for Wondery, and I work directly with him to kind of help develop some new shows, scheduling everything. It's very like coordinator position in a lot of ways. The super fun writing and producing stuff is probably 30 to 40% of my job. Everything else is kind of like show development,
absolutely,
editing, stuff like that.
Oh, this is so exciting. This is awesome. Jobs. Let's see. Improv.
We had an improv question. And actually, Brittany had an improv question too that I really liked, which is what has improv taught me about communication? So I'll answer Will's question about what improv style or whatever I prefer. And I could talk about this ad nauseum, so I'm going to try to keep it short because there's a ton of different styles of improv depending on how many people you have. And most common UCB, Upper Citizens Brigade, IO, Improv Olympic, based out of Chicago, which is closed out here, and some other local theaters. I'm sure there's an improv theater somewhere near you. A lot of those people will do long form and something called a herald, which is a very specific style. You usually have 6 to 8 people. You have a question about?
No.
What are you going to say? Okay, cool.
I'm oohing and ahhing.
But there's a ton of styles. There's something called close quarters where you can have 2 even people. 2's the smallest group. I say that. There are people who do solo improv sets, and that's big because you have to just jump between characters. So there's like a ton of stuff. Ton of forms. Google them. Here's some if you want to learn more. Harold, Armando, Laurent. There's a flower. Most duos, I don't actually know what those forms are called. You're a little more limited. Second City focuses on re-improvisation, and mostly re-improvisation for writing sketches. So that's specifically what I'm trained in. And that is kind of really just discovery process. So you say yes to your own ideas. You do a scene. You'll be like, okay, great, this worked. That did not work at all. Let's do it again. Try it differently. Maybe do a different take, have a different character, see if it works better.
Mhm.
And then learn kind of as you go and being able to edit as you go. So I think this self-awareness and self-editing process is something I really enjoy. And then, yes, you want to introduce?
I want to pause because I think there's an important pedagogical takeaway here. When you talk about these improv exercises, and sometimes I think it's easy for the audience to create a distance between the performer and the audience. But when you're creating, and when you're creating on a dime, right, in the now, in a live setting, or even in this re-improv, right, this writing phase process, the big term I'm hearing you define without saying is critical thinking.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, can you not only verify that for us, but I feel like it's one of the commanding qualities that a communication degree can develop within, students.
Yeah, absolutely. Critical thinking, and I think self-awareness are two big things. You have to be critical thinking about what is happening, but also what you are doing. And that's a huge improv tenet, is I have to be aware of the choices that I'm making. What does that mean in terms of what's happening in this scene? You're building a ship kind of as you're going. Or Keegan-Michael Key says, you're close in, focused really tightly, camera shot on one thing, and you're like backing up slowly as you go to reveal the whole picture. So you have no idea what's happening. And it is a direct interaction with the audience. Audience feedback directly influences what I continue to do. If they laugh at something, I'm going to continue to play that game. I'm going to hit that point over and over again. That's what this scene is now about, because we have both mutually decided, I introduced this concept, they liked it. Great. We've both mutually decided this is what my scene is about. And then the other aspect of the critical thinking, aside of being aware of what I'm doing, is what are my scene partners doing? What are they putting out? I have to pay attention to them, anticipate some of their moves, but not too much, because then I'd be controlling what's happening instead of creating it with somebody else. And then what am I doing? What's important about what I'm saying in response to that? Because you're not just going to throw out an answer. It has to make sense in the world that you're building together, which is exactly like everyday life, everyday company work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me draw this comparison back to what we do and how we're training. Of course, like this, we strategically emphasize interviewing, but there's so many other components going into it: networking, social media presence, and so on. But it's all built around this concept and execution of interviewing. Well, interviewing is not just me with my fedora and press post-it note on the side of it, like walking around looking for clues. We're everything we do is interviewing. When you're describing your interactions, these luncheons, from the casual to the professional, this is an interviewing situation. You're constantly engaging. You're engaging in semi-intimate, like interpersonal situations and settings. You're learning how to read people, but also respond to people, and you're ultimately looking for opportunities or showcasing. It's a back and forth. It's simultaneous communication, as the communication model suggests, where you're interviewing them, but they're interviewing you, right? They're feeling you out for your potential as a possible, not just employee, an ally, as you say, many other factors for mutual gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, even very kind of something that wouldn't seem like it is even a big deal. Like my best friend went on a date, and I'm going to call her and I'm going to be like, how was it? Tell me everything. Give me these details. She's going to respond based on how engaged she thinks I am and how probing I am in my questions. So you're absolutely right. Every single conversation is an interview in a lot of ways.
All right. Was there an additional question you wanted to tackle from Brittany's list?
You covered a little bit. I just wanted to hit to make sure she has a question.
Sure.
What has improv taught me about communication? Kind of what we talked about, that it's all these communication theories apply. All these improv practices apply if you think about them. I think the other thing I really liked was what aspects of communication studies have helped me the most.
Ooh.
communication it has a reputation for being very vague as a degree, and people pick it under duress. I did, but it turned out it suited me very well. I was a geology major before this. I don't know if I've told you that, but I thought I wanted to work in a museum, but I can't imagine me there now.
I can see you squatting in like some khaki shorts with the same pair of glasses on, sort of evaluating some rocks or something.
Which, I mean, I only wanted to do that because of the book, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and one of the girls goes and does that. I realized I want to play one, but I don't want to actually be in I don't do well in the sun. I'm too pale. So what aspects of communication studies have helped me the most, I think, has been this stuff, the interpersonal connections and the ability to connect with somebody, being able to understand where somebody else is coming from, this empathy. Because that's at the core of everything I do is like emotional reactions and empathy. That's what makes a good scene. That's what makes things funny, is because you can recognize something in yourself that you are now seeing in this scenario that's absurd. And then in the storytelling that we do here at Wondery, it's an emotional storytelling. If you don't find something that really resonates or connects with you, you're not going to care what kind of stories I'm telling. So those are the huge things that I've taken away.
This is amazing. No pressure here whatsoever. Do not need to have any number higher than 0 as your response. But are there any additional questions that you read through? Themes, even if you can't remember exactly who asked, or anything else we haven't talked about or tackled that you feel would be relevant to our students?
I think I feel like I've talked a lot.
Sure.
Well, I will say I'm not going to stop talking. This is my career. I think the big thing.
And don't you let anyone stop you from talking, right?
Yes. One of the big themes I think is like, I can't remember who asked it. It was really good. Kind of like doubting the path that I'm on. Like every day that happens, but I think that's normal. And so I would say kind of, if there's a theme of like, especially as like communication studies, anybody who engages in storytelling or stuff like this for a living, like you are a little overly sensitive, I think, to a lot of issues. And like, I'm going to read your body language because I'm overly concerned with how you're feeling. Like I said something and you kind of twitched. Is that like, are you mad at me now? Or is that just kind of an accident? So I think we're trained to look into this kind of stuff. So I think anything you can do to like chill out your brain a little bit is great. Which is also probably why we watch a lot of TV, because it turns this off for a minute. But I think trusting the path that you're on. I was questioning everything this morning. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I coming back? Like, what do I do? That happened today. That happens every day. I feel like my career isn't moving fast enough. I finally, after 3 years, feel like I am in a career and on a path. Whereas before that, it was just kind of like aimless wandering and doing sketches with my friends and not really being able to capitalize on any of that. But now, I just have to be patient and wait out the rest of this directing program that I'm in, wait out kind of the development of my improv troupe, wait out the like kind of just keep doing the work that I'm doing at my job, and it'll progress eventually. So I think just patience and knowing that doubting everything is normal, but try to quiet that and be at peace with where you are as much as you can.
Oh, this is nice. Great takeaways here from Leah Sutherland. Leah, thank you so much for investing your time in us, and allowing us to broaden our horizon and gain a deeper understanding of not only what you do, but the kinds of potential areas students can take that communication degree. And so many takeaways. This course is sort of giving back in bushels. And if there's anything you want to plug, any upcoming projects or something like that that you would want us to know about, ways our students can sort of what fan you with digital roses or something like that for your performance today, please let us know, or I can pass it along to them. But it's been a treat having you with us here.
Thank you so much. I hope it was useful. I really do. I probably talked more than I should have. I guess if anything, you want to know anything, you can email me. You have my email, or I'm on Facebook at Leah Sutherland, although I'm trying to use it less, but so send me a message because I'm not really checking my Facebook. Plugs, any Wondery show, yay. Just search Wondery. Wondery.com is our website. Wondery on the Apple Podcast Store. We have a whole page of just all of our shows. American Innovations just came out. It's really good. I actually really like it. And Tides of History is the one I produced. You'll hear me on a couple episodes talking about books. So those are the big ones.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you once again. Many thanks, many praises, right? All the praise. And so I hope you all have found this informative. Continue to gain insights and direction, not only with your questions, but how we organically apply these to our everyday lives. So we will formally end this session, and we look forward to hearing from your interview protocols and video questions as we shift into week 4 of COM 4603, Creating Social Media Presence and Cultural Movements. Thank you.